Greetings again, folks. It's the Ides of March. Many years ago, this is the day that Julius Caesar was assassinated by his friend Brutus, as well as the other senators. Just got off the phone with a friend, and I gave him a very quick run through the Bible. Didn't get very far through it, but I realized that I should be having that particular conversation with you, and I should be giving that particular bit of knowledge to you. So I'm going to try to take it from right where I told my buddy Rick on the phone just a little bit ago. I'm a Bible believer. I'm a Bible reader. You'll find that the Bible has a different story to it when you get into it on your own. Let me see if I can take care of this. Okay. Still getting used to this equipment, still setting things up. I apologize. I'm just getting on my feet as far as talking again. Try to avoid the ums and the ands and the hesitation. Try not to rub my nose while I'm on camera and all that other stuff. The Bible has got the truth in it, but it's not easy to get to. Basically, what happened is Eve was seduced by the serpent. In the King James Version, Eve responds to Yahweh, Creator, Father God, when he asks her, "What have you done?" She blames the serpent, saying that basically the serpent that you placed here, the serpent beguiled me. And beguiled means seduced. So the story about the original sin, or what we've been told is the original sin, has nothing to do with an apple or eating an apple. It has to do with the pear on the ground, as some of my other brothers say, quite wisely, quite accurately. So this Satan seduced Eve, and he fathered Cain. Cain was half Adamic DNA and half fallen angelic DNA. Cain was a hybrid. Cain, in turn, killed his half-brother, Abel. Abel was fully Adamic. Abel was fathered by Adam, and his mother was Eve. In the Bible, it says that Eve was the mother of all the living, and I believe this is what it refers to. However, you may have a better take on what that means. Eve was the mother of all the living. When Abel was murdered by Cain, Cain was banished from the Garden of Eden, and before he left, he complained to Yahweh Father and said, "Hey, where will I go? They will kill me out there." Now that right there is a tip, a clue. A big clue that there's other people on the earth, not just those that are in the Garden of Eden. And yet God put a mark on Cain, a protective mark that basically said, he who harms Cain will suffer sevenfold the harm that he inflicts upon Cain. Cain left the Garden of Eden, and this is directly in the Bible, and we have the scripture says he went to the land of Nod. He went east to the land of wanderers. From there he built cities and he took wives. He took wives from the Mongolian women. So Cain's children were half Mongolian, 1/4 Adamic, and 1/4 Satanic DNA. And then those are, of course, it's a hybrid, it's a mix. Those people, his children, settled in the land of Canaan. They were the Canaanites. And when Abram left Terah, or Haran, don't quite remember which one it was, I think it was Terah. No, Terah was the name of his father, and Haran was the name of the city. He left there, and God says, "Go to a place I will show you." And he did leave, and he went to the promised land, and it was there that Creator Father promised this land to Abraham's children. Abraham had a child by his first wife, Hagar, the Egyptian slave woman. Um, there was nothing wrong with him. His name was Ishmael. Uh, God, from Ishmael, there were 12 dukes produced, and God promised to bless those, and they each became mighty nations, mighty kingdoms as well. Ultimately, though, he had a child with his wife Sarai. After the birth of the child, Sarai became known as Sarah. And at some point, I don't remember exactly when, but it will come to me, I'm sure. Abram, his name was changed to Abraham. Now, the child they had was called Isaac. Isaac meant laughter. Isaac also is kind of an abbreviation, if you will, for Saxons. Saxons, Isaac's sons, are descendants of, well, Isaac. Isaac, in turn, had two children. He had Esau and he had Jacob. And Esau sold his inheritance for a bowl of red lentils, or a bowl of red porridge, and the name for red was Edom. And after he sold his inheritance to his brother Jacob for a bowl of red porridge, Esau's name changed to Edom. So he became known as Edom, and his children are known as the Edomites. Very important. Esau became very enraged with his brother because he felt that his brother stole his inheritance from him, and then later stole his birthright from his father. And so Esau was going to kill his brother Jacob. Their mother, Rebekah, found out about it, and she and her husband urged their son Jacob to go to Haran, go to be with Laban. And from there, Jacob spent several years, probably 20 years. He acquired his 4 wives there. He got the two girls, and he also got their handmaids, and he had most of his children there. Now, when he returned back home to the Promised Land, at the river he met a man, and he wrestled with him all night long on the river, on the banks of the river. And the man who wrestled with him beat him by touching him in the hollow of his hip. And as a result, that weakened the sinew there, and he became a little bit on the limp side. However, he wrestled all night and prevailed. He stood his ground. And at the end of that, just before the stranger was going to leave, he insisted the stranger tell him his name. Well, rather than tell him his name, the stranger gave Jacob a new name, and that was Israel. Israel means he who rules with God. El is God. So he became known as Israel. So that's how we get the name Israel. Israel had 4 wives and many children, daughters and sons. So Israel proper are the descendants of Israel the man. It's not a land named Israel. It's not a nation, well, not a government named Israel, not a state named Israel. It's a people that are named Israel, and that's very important for you to understand. At this point, I'm not sure which direction to go. I wish I had a little bit of interaction with you all so I could actually go in the right direction for my audience. I don't have a sense for what you all have been reading and where you all stand right now. But it's important to keep these names and the characters. You have to learn the name of the characters, and you have to learn the plot, and the dynamics are very important, because by learning about their problems and their mistakes, we can avoid doing the same thing. So the Bible is very useful for that in particular. So we have a battle that began in the Garden of Eden, and we can say that, well, it probably began before then. But we're going to say that's where it began, and that's where it's documented. And first blood was Abel Abel's blood being shed at the hand of his half-brother Cain. So Cain slew Abel, and Abel's blood cried up from the ground to Yahweh. All of these little things are important, and you'll find out as we go along. As I said, Esau became known as Edom. Esau settled at Mount Seir, and Mount Seir was also called Mount Edom, and it's in the southern part of Israel, the land that we call Israel today, or Palestine, whatever view, whatever perspective you choose. They stayed there for quite a while. And an important thing to note is that in about 148 BC, there was a period of 5 years of warring, and John Hyrcanus won. He prevailed in the Maccabean Wars, I believe it was called. So he prevailed, and he told the Edomites at Mount Seir to either get circumcised and worship and convert and worship the one true God, or he was going to kill them. So he didn't make them much of an offer. It's either you worship our God or I'm going to kill you. Well, they decided it was wiser to survive and worship the one true God. And so this is in about 143, 148 BC. And by the time we come to the birth of Christ, Herod the Great is the ruler of the Promised Land, ruler of Israel. It's an important notation that in the Bible, in the New Testament, Herod the Great is called an Idumean. An Idumean is the Greek term for Edomite. So the Edomites had become so great and so powerful that they were running the show. They were governing the place. And as we read in the Bible, Herod the Great ordered all of the babies under 2 years of age to be slaughtered, because he was busy trying to get a hold of the Christ at that point and kill him. So this is an important thing. Now, the Edomites at Mount Seir had a whole different culture, entirely different from Israel's culture. You can read about the culture to a large extent in a book called the Book of Jasher. It's not the prophet Jasher. The Book of Jasher means the Book of the Upright. And it's written in the same style as Genesis, which is rather quaint and rather endearing, and you'll probably like it if you like the Book of Genesis. It's written in the same modality, the same style. In there you'll find the characters of Edom described. You'll also find the character of Sodom and Gomorrah and some other cities described as well. One thing I want to tell you about is that Sodom, we actually found the ruins of Sodom and Gomorrah, and they did an excavation of Sodom, and we found at the level of destruction that all the bodies were pointed in one direction out from the blast center, and there was a crystal found in that level, and that crystal, one of those crystals, was taken to a laboratory in New Mexico, Sandia Labs, one of the laboratories in Mexico, and they asked for some help in identifying the crystal, and the people at the labs were taken back and demanded to know where they got this crystal from. And the reason they demanded to know is because this crystal is only present at the site of nuclear blast. So we have physical evidence that Sodom and Gomorrah, hellfire and brimstone, was right. They were nuked. The angels that showed up there nuked Sodom and nuked Gomorrah. So we do have that in our books, and we have that in modern archaeology. So that's hard facts. That's hard science. There's no doubting that. No doubt at all. The Edomites stayed at Mount Sinai for a long time, and in approximately 700 AD, the king of Khazaria, I think he was called a Bulgar, he decided that he wanted his people to be able to get along with the people on each side of his country, and he had Muslims on one side and he had Christians on the other side. And he realized that the Jews got along with everybody. So he wanted to be able to get along with everyone, and he wanted his people to be loyal to him. So he and his nobles, he had his nobles convert to Judaism. That was about 700 AD. The Jews in Mount Edom heard about this, and they decided that they would move up to Caesarea, and they would help the people in their conversion to Judaism. So the Edomites went north into Caesarea with their fallen angelic DNA. They brought their satanic DNA, and they intermingled with the Khazarians. The Khazarians were a Turkish-Mongolian peoples, much more closely related to Genghis Khan than they were to the Israelites. They weren't descendants of Israel at all. And so they were taught and trained by the Edomites that came up from Mount Seir into Caesarea. The Khazarians were a warring people. They loved war so much they kept a standing army. It was something like a standing army of, I believe it was 40 million. That's the number that comes to mind. It just seemed like an awfully large army. Maybe it was 40,000, but they had a standing army, and they hired their army out to their neighbors, and they made money off that. They also incorporated the mystic religions from Babylon, the ancient Petar priest, P-E-T-A-R. Basically, they worshiped the penis. They worshiped the male appendage, and they also had a practice of shrine ritual prostitution. Just get that word out one time. Hope this doesn't cause trouble. I'm very much aware that there's certain hot terms on this in this medium. So they actually incorporated some of the black magic out of Babylon. They incorporated some of the old religions that came out of Samaria. The Petar priests. They were magicians. And in case you're wondering, Peter Magnus, out of the book of Acts, was a Petar priest. He was a Mesopotamian priest, and that Peter is really spelled P-E-T-A-R, and that's an important to remember. But at this point, we're back to Caesarea, and the Khazarians were a sociopathic culture, and they gave their neighbors nothing but grief. And finally, the White Russians, who I believe are Israelite descendants, they had it with them, and they drove them off, and from Caesarea they went west, primarily into Poland and into the Baltic states and other places, but primarily Poland, where they became the Ashkenazi Jews. These are the people that speak Yiddish. Yiddish has nothing to do with Hebrew. It has nothing to do with the Hebrew alphabet or Paleo-Hebrew. So I'm going to leave it right there for now. Just to recap, the war that we are in started in the Garden of Eden. It began with Eve being seduced by one of the Satans. His name was Gadriel. You can check that out in other books and on the internet. Gadriel there's 3 different ways to spell Gadriel. G-A-D-R-E-E-L is one way. And from Gadriel, we get the name God. Gad, or God, which is like the shortened nickname for this fallen angel. He was one of 5 leaders of the fallen ones that conspired at Mount Hermon. I don't know what happened with the other 199 fallen angels and their children, but the Bible doesn't contain much about them. It contains a little bit, and there's probably greater references outside of the Bible on what happened with them. I also believe that this concept of original sin is something that was kind of fabricated as people were making up a religion. I look at the original sin as being caused by the 200 that conspired on Mount Hermon to go into the daughters of men because the daughters of men were fair. They found them attractive. I believe that the fallen angelic DNA is dominant. I think it's stronger. You know, for instance, we know that among what we call races today, that Negro DNA is dominant. So whenever you have a cross between the races, that the Negro DNA dominates, and you end up with those traits in particular. We also know that Caucasoid is the recessive, so you lose those genes over time. You lose those traits. You lose that phenotype rather easily and quickly over time when there is intermarriage. So the bad guys are descendants of Cain, and Cain was fathered by a fallen angel. So we're not dealing with just spiritual beings, we're dealing with literal DNA children. If you stayed with me today, I think that's enough for today. I've started the second channel called Awakening Israel. My pastor, who's no longer well anymore, he is alive but not well, he told me one time that the most important thing, John, is awakening our brothers and sisters in Israel. And so I'm calling this channel Awakening Israel, and I'm specifically trying to awaken my brothers and sisters in Israel. The United States of America is a great Israelite nation. Notice I didn't say the great Israelite nation. It's one of several great Israelite nations today. Today, all Israelite nations are under fire. The evil one is seeking to genocide us. Some of you are going to call it white genocide. You need to understand that they know who they are and they know who we are. They know the Bible better than we do. They're using the Bible against us. We need to study the Bible. We need to get shored up. We need to become stronger so that we can not be deceived and we can hold our ground. Those are the two things that Yahshua the Messiah, whom a lot of you are going to call Jesus the Christ or Jesus Christ, those are the things that he told us to do more than one time in the New Testament. He told us, be not deceived, hold your ground. So those are the two commandments that he gave us. So by reading the Bible, you will be less prone to being deceived, and you'll be better able to hold your ground and defend your faith and defend yourself quite literally. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, if you got something from it, please like it. Please share this video. I don't have any, well, I think I have one new subscriber actually. But this is going to be an entirely new channel, so there won't be anybody subscribing to it. And please subscribe. If you don't want to miss anything, check that little bell. I have a Bible. It's the best Bible in the English language today. It's called Proper Name Version of the King James Bible, published in 2015. Various editions are on sale. I'm going to try to get the link up here. However, if it doesn't say my name up in the link in the address, you're not getting the big discount. If that's the case, then feel free to call the publisher up directly on the phone and tell them that I sent you and you want me to get credit for the sale, and ask him what he can do for you, because there's a 14 print leatherette Bible that's beautiful. There's also large print leatherette Bibles that are tabbed, which might make it easier for some of you who are beginning, so you can find different books in the Bible quickly. There's also paperback versions, which are a bit more affordable. You're going to find these Bibles list price below market value to begin with, and then you're going to find that through this show and through supporting me, you're going to get a deep discount. So I believe a $70 Bible was on sale for $45. The publisher is changing prices as we speak because, well, he's in charge of it. It's his work. He's very highly motivated to get these Bibles out there. I want you to have them for several reasons besides the fact that you're supporting me and my channel and my mission. You're going to be able to understand this Bible better than the King James Version. You're going to have the proper name of God, Yahweh, his personal name. It's important that you appeal to him based upon his personal name. And you'll even see that in Genesis there's a time when men first started to call upon the name of Yahweh. You're also going to see that the proper name for Jesus, which is Yeshua, which means he who saves the anointed. Yeshua the Messiah. You will find the word Christian in this Bible mentioned 3 times. We recently had a big powwow on this, and I had even an outsider, a non-believer who knew the Bible better than we did, who brought things to our attention. Christian and Christians in the New Testament a total of 3 times. The word Christian was apparently a word that the believers did not call each other. They were called that by the Romans around them, by the Roman pagans. They referred to them as Christian. And it appears as though it was not a polite or complimentary term. You have to remember that anyone hung upon a tree is cursed. And so when they call us Christians, they're saying we're cursed. So I've taken some counsel with my older brothers. We've come to the conclusion that it was called the Way. We also have come to the conclusion that, well, I have anyway, that Yahshua said, the faith of our fathers. It's very important. Those 2 terms are very important terms. What we are is we're Bible believers, we're Bible readers, and we bring this stuff, we put this stuff to practice in our lives. So I invite you to get this copy of the Bible. I'm going to be opening it and referring to it and reading from it. Primarily, I'll also be referring to other versions of the Bible. You found my channel. I'm so glad you're here. I can't tell you what it means to me. There's nothing I love more than discussing the truth that is in the Bible. There's nothing more I like talking about than this. It's most important to me. This is my mission late in life. I think this really does, well, it's worthy of all that I can do for it and for you. So until we check in tomorrow or the next day, bye-bye.